Before we start this evening, could I ask everyone in the room to please silence your phones, except for our emergency personnel? Just check your phones and please silence them. Thank you. And also, Commissioner Simmons is joining us via Zoom today. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the March 20th West Fargo City Commission meeting. I now call the meeting to order. At this time, I would turn the meeting over to Chief Dennis Ordinance for a program. Chief Ordinance? Please.
Rise for the posting of the colors. Honor guard, post colors.
Present. Oh.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Oh. Please be seated. Good evening, Chief, and welcome.
Good evening, Commission President Dardis and members of the Commission. Thank you again tonight for allowing us to take the first part of your Commission meeting. I know you have a full agenda tonight, so I'll be brief. Just wanted to share that this is a great night for the Police Department. We love to be able to come in front of the Commission and introduce you to the newest members of the West Fargo Police Department. Just as a side note, before I call each one of them up here to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves, I thought you'd like to know that 3 of the 4 officers that are going to introduce themselves in front of you tonight are graduates of our recent Lake Region State College Police Officer Training Program that graduated last August. And so they joined our police department after that successful collaboration that we had last year, graduating, I believe, if I remember correctly, 17 people out of our inaugural partnership that we established with Lake Region State College. So certainly we're the recipients of some great personnel as a result of that partnership, which you as commissioners have been very supportive of, and so we're very appreciative of that. And so without further ado, I will call up each one of the officers individually, and we will have their significant other, whoever's going to come up, pin them. I'll have them introduce themselves and get some photographs, and then we'll do the formal swearing in after all four of them have finished that. So Officer Brandon Oldham, please.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Brandon Oldham. I've lived in West Fargo my whole life, whole 25 years. Went to West Fargo High School, graduated in 2016. Before pursuing my career in law enforcement, went down to North Dakota State College of Science for 2 years, joined the Lake Region State College Police Academy in 2018 before getting hired with the Cass County Sheriff's Office, where I served as a correctional officer for 4 years. The reason why I chose West Fargo PD is because I lived here my whole life and I want to give back to the community that I grew up in.
Thank you, Brandon.
I believe we're making history tonight. It's the first father-son combo or duo to serve as police officers with the city of West Fargo. So Officer Matt Oldham is going to be pinning his son Brandon. All right, Officer Connor Hireman.
Good evening. My name is Connor Hireman. I was raised in St. Michael, Minnesota, where I attended St. Michael Albertville High School. I graduated in 2019. After that, I pursued a criminal justice degree at the College of Minnesota State University, Moorhead. After 2 years there, I went to Lake Region Academy here in West Fargo. After that, I was hired by the West Fargo Police Department. Going throughout the academy, I was able to work with a lot of West Fargo officers and really see how much they cared about their community and cared about this department, and that was what a big inspiration for me. And that's the reason I chose to come work here for West Fargo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Officer Skylar Angeles.
Good evening. My name is Skylar Angeles. I grew up here in West Fargo. I graduated from Cheyenne High School in 2016 before attending Concordia College and Minnesota State University Moorhead. Afterwards, I ended up attending the Lake Region Peace Officer Standard Training Program here in West Fargo. through Lake Region. And the reason that I chose West Fargo Police Department is that in my mind, it didn't make sense to go anywhere else. This is my hometown, and I really wanted to protect and serve this community.
Thank you.
Congratulations. You bet. And Officer Tyler Kraus.
Good evening. I'm Tyler Kraus, born and raised here in West Fargo. I graduated from West Fargo High in 2013. After high school, I went to Alex Tech to their police program. After that, I attended the Lake Region this past summer and graduated that. Reason I chose West Fargo PD is back in 2012, I went through the youth academy, and growing up here, just being around the department, want to get back to the community I grew up in.
Thank you. Pretty proud night for us. So obviously, not only, I think we've got some great young men here to join the police department, but as you could tell from a few people, we've got some folks that are lifelong, grew up in West Fargo, want to come back and serve our community. And I think regardless of whether they grew up here or have lived there their whole life, that is the commitment that all 75 of our sworn police officers here in West Fargo have that commitment they have made. So we're really happy to have them on board, and I think they're going to do a tremendous job serving and protecting our community and maintaining the fantastic reputation we have within the community with the police department. So thanks again for your time, and if you want to come up, I'm sure the commission would probably like to get a photograph. Actually, you know what? Let's do the appointment first. Let's do the oath, and then we'll do that. I almost missed a step here, so come on up, guys. All right, if you raise your right hand, please. I state your name.
I, Brian Summer,
Having been duly appointed a police officer
having duly appointed a police officer
for the city of West Fargo,
for the city of West Fargo,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and that of North Dakota.
and that of North Dakota.
I will faithfully and impartially,
I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
perform the duties of said office
perform the duties of said office
according to law.
according to law.
I will constantly strive
I will constantly strive
to achieve the objectives
to achieve the objectives
and ideals as stated,
and ideals as stated,
dedicating myself
dedicating myself
to my chosen profession
to
my chosen profession,
law enforcement.
law enforcement.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. So anybody that's here go ahead, Mayor.
On behalf of a very grateful community, thank you for sharing these wonderful young men with our community. I want to guarantee you and assure you of one thing, is their fellow officers that are in blue this evening that serve our community, the command staff led by Chief Ordinance and Deputy Chief Nielsen, are the best of the best of the best. They will take care of your sons and daughters. They will take care of our community. So again, on behalf of a very grateful community, to have 3 native sons on this, as well as another welcome gentleman, it's a great day for West Fargo. Out of respect for all of you, we're going to dismiss you whenever you'd like to go. You don't have to sit through the rest of the commission meeting. Again, on behalf of a very grateful community, thank you for sharing your loved ones. We'll keep them safe, I promise. Nice job, Chief. Thank you.
Exactly. I know I need it. That's why I do it.
See you back in here.
What's that?
You'll be back.
Yeah, I'm just gonna chat with him real quick and then turn it over to Pete and I'll be back.
Pretty cool to see those hands.
Moving on to the next agenda item is approve the order of the agenda as presented with the exception of regular item number 1 was moved up above, which is the swearing-in ceremony.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda with the amendment as presented. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Emily, is Commissioner Simmons still connected?
Yes, I am. I said aye, Mayor.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure, Commissioner.
Yep, thank you.
Next order of business is to approve the minutes of March 6, 2023. Is there any amendments or corrections to the minutes?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. And I have a second from Commissioner Olson. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of March 6, 2023 as presented. They are on pages 3 through 6 in your packet. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item E, the building permits report has been presented. It's on pages 7 through 8 in your packet. Commissioners, do you have any additions or corrections or questions?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the building permits as presented. They are on pages 7 through 8 on your packet. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The next order of business is a consent agenda. We have items A through H, starting on pages 9, ending on pages 92. It is in the packet, and they have been distributed.
Just one item for clarification on item E.
Item E, thank you, Commissioner Olson.
On the paragraph that says the pull tab device at top shell, it should be shelf.
Shelf, add an F.
Yep.
Emily, do you follow along where we're at? If you take care of that, thank you. Again,
I'll make the motion to approve.
thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda with the addendum on item E, Top Shelf Tavern. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on, again, reminder that we are on item number 2 of the regular agenda. Item number 2 is the second reading and the final approval of Title IV zoning ordinance amendment regarding daycare land uses. Mr. Aaron Nelson, Director of for Planning and Zoning, City of West Fargo. It is in pages 93 through 111 in your packet. Good evening, Mr. Nelson. Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you. So item number 2, I believe it was, is the second reading and final approval of a Title IV zoning ordinance amendment relating to daycare uses within the zoning code. This is, again, second reading of an ordinance. There's been no changes to the ordinance since this was originally presented to you 2 weeks ago. Again, the purpose of this ordinance is to remove some of the regulatory barriers to providing childcare within the city of West Fargo, as recommended by the subcommittee, the City Commission Subcommittee on Childcare. So with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions you may have for staff.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Is there any questions for him? Any questions for Mr. Nelson?
Make the motion to approve, second reading.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
We have a motion and thank you, Commissioner George. We have a motion and a second with regard to approve the second reading and the final approval of Title IV zoning ordinance amendment regarding daycare land uses. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Item number 3 is a presentation of planning needs assessment action by Mr. Aaron Nelson, again, Planning Director at City of West Fargo. It is in pages 112 through 159 in the packet. Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. So I'll try and keep this item relatively brief for you all, but certainly able to answer any questions as I go or at the end. Included in your packet is the Planning Needs Assessment Action Plan. The action plan constitutes the final recommendations of the Planning Needs Assessment, which has taken place over the roughly past 6 months or so. And the presentation tonight is in follow-up to a joint working session of the City Commission and Planning and Zoning Commission, which took place on February 8th of 2023. At that time, these recommendations were discussed a little bit more informally, and so the purpose of tonight's presentation is to essentially publicly present those items included in the action plan. So with that, I do want to start out with a quick overview of what I'll be covering tonight. As I mentioned, the action plan included in your packet is basically constitutes a set of recommended action steps that came out of this assessment process. The assessment builds on recommendations from existing city plans and policies, namely the West Fargo 2.0 Comprehensive Plan. It's intended to prioritize some of those recommendations from past plans and different efforts based on organization-wide input. And so the consultant that led this effort held a series of focus groups, and you all maybe recall taking, I think, an online survey probably 4 months ago at this point, and then the working session last month in February. And the overall intention here is to bring some transparency to the planning department's future work plans, as well as any associated budget considerations that relate to some of the recommended action steps here. The overall overarching purpose of this effort, which you've probably heard before when this was presented at previous stages in this process, I think are worth noting here. One, to clarify current planning and development related issues, to prioritize the focus areas of greatest need, and then ultimately to build consensus around some of those associated action steps in order to go about addressing the identified areas of greatest need. And then before I dive into the presentation here, I thought it'd be helpful to just provide a little bit of a framework for how to think about some of these things in order to set the stage, if you will. And so to start with, what should you know about the projects? The action plan is essentially a list of projects that are divided into 3 categories: short-term, mid-term, and long-term. The first thing I would note is that all of these projects are interconnected in one way or another. Decisions made on one project will affect other projects and vice versa. Secondly, the projects include a range of different things. So it includes studies, activities, recommended process changes, recommended communication steps. There is no one-size-fits-all project or anything like that. They all come in different shapes and sizes, so just to be aware of that. Thirdly, the projects are interdepartmental with various degrees of involvement. And so while the original focus of this effort was to focus on kind of the planning department and help inform the planning department's work plan over the course of the next several years, everything that the planning department does, or any department really does, is interrelated with everybody else. And so through the conversations with various departments and city officials, there were a lot of topics that came up that were also incorporated into the action plan as well. And then the last thing I want to note is just that the timelines included in the action plan itself are a recommendation in themselves, but they are not set in stone. It does provide a general idea of how long some of these things might take and what the different steps involved are, but those timelines can shift as priorities change and different items are identified. So it is meant to be somewhat of a living conversation. None of this is really set in stone. And so for purposes of today's presentation, again, I will try and keep it somewhat abbreviated. This will be essentially an abbreviated version of past presentations. This material was presented most recently at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting 2 weeks ago, as well as the joint working session of the Planning and Zoning and City Commission last month. And I'll provide some additional information at the very end here for any folks looking to dive a little deeper. For purposes of today as well, I'm going to focus primarily on short and midterm projects that are primarily related to the planning department. And ultimately, I think as I mentioned previously, there's no action being requested tonight. This is really an informational item for the City Commission as well as for the general public or anybody else seeking additional information about these past conversations. So with that overview, I'll dive right in and again focus primarily on some of these short and midterm projects. So the short-term projects, there are 5 of them included. The first one listed, and these are listed in no particular order. The important thing is short, mid, or long-term. Those are really the only 3 classifications in terms of prioritization. So the first one listed is the Downtown Master Plan. This is an item that has been presented or discussed with the City Commission recently, mainly due to the city's application and granting of or approval of a award is the word I'm looking for, award of a downtown placemaking planning grant. And so that the award of that grant and the timeline associated with the use of those grant funds really forced us to jumpstart this conversation ahead of this overall conversation here. And so we are in the process of identifying a project consultant to hopefully help out with this process. And I will be coming back to you here shortly, hopefully in 2 weeks, with a more detailed update on where that process is at. For purposes of today, though, the main focus areas of that downtown master plan are things like business and economic development, parking, future growth and development. And then the fourth one is escaping me at the moment here, but is essentially an update to the city's past downtown plan, which is roughly 12 years old at this point. Next in the action plan is the Title IV text amendments. These are essentially some low-hanging fruit, if you will, on some amendments that can be staff-initiated, things that would improve processes or other areas that are in need of attention. This is something that can be internally done through staff, through the Planning and Zoning Commission, and ultimately through the City Commission. Some of these things also include any recommendations that might come out of a downtown master plan, for example, here as well. And then the third bullet point, consideration of a creation of a new zoning district, for example, if it's found that one might be needed for the lagoon property, for example. Which again is an example of how all of these are interrelated in one way or another, and is a good segue to the next project here, which is a recommendation for a lagoon strategy and plan. The recommended action steps associated with the lagoon strategy is to first determine an administrative process for having some community conversations about what to do with the lagoons once they are decommissioned. The consultant recommends the development of a request for expressions of interest from the development community, and this would be sent out. Hopefully, we would garner some nationwide attention from developers across the country to solicit their thoughts and interest in potential development strategies or different various development uses of the lagoon's property in order to identify some maybe potential unique uses of the property. Before issuing any sort of request for expressions of interest, there is a recommendation that the city consider a range of financial structures that would help kind of inform the request. You can think of this as a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, the city could sell the land outright to a developer, which is the kind of quick and easy option. Or the city could enter into a public-private partnership, for example, in order to get some of those, desirable aspects of future development of the property. And then on the far end of the spectrum might be the city working as master developer to help lead and kind of partner with different developments or master plan the area, for example. So it's really, you can think of it as a spectrum, and there's various options in between those as well. But the main point here is just to really recognize that the lagoons, it really is a city asset, and the city should think very carefully about what are the highest and best uses of that property, not just short-term, but long-term. Another project listed is the economic development strategy. There were some simple recommendations there for improving current policies and processes. Some of these things could be done in-house, but larger things like updated market studies may require some outside assistance from a professional in that field. Also, some of the projects listed here would benefit from having things like a market study, and so there is opportunities if the city were to develop a market study through some other study to utilize that citywide. And then lastly is some capital improvement planning recommendations here. This is something the city obviously already does, but just recognizing the recent bipartisan infrastructure law. There's some maybe new opportunities that haven't previously existed for infrastructure funding, and the city should just keep an open eye towards those opportunities and potentially look to fast track qualifying projects, for example. So those were the short-term recommendations and projects. Next, the midterm. I did shuffle these around a little bit, so they might appear a little different than how they appear in your packet, but the growth areas master plan was one of the bigger ones. This is one that I think came up more often than not in the various discussions. I think this one would have very likely been a short-term recommendation had it not been for some of the timeline associated with the FM diversion project, which does buy us a little bit of time to undertake such a study. But essentially, the growth area master plan is recognizing the potential future growth area of the city of West Fargo. Within our current city limits, the city is fairly well built out, and until permanent flood protection is in place, it's going to be difficult for the city to continue to expand outward. So in the short term, we can look for opportunities to expand, inward, such as the downtown area, for example. But when the FM diversion is in place, that will open up some opportunities for future growth, and the city would be best served to have a pretty good plan of action in place prior to that date in order to kind of stay ahead of the curve, if you will, in terms of the future development pressures. A lot of this is obviously contingent upon various market conditions and timing for those FM diversion and different things. But it's important to recognize that there is some lead time to this as well, and so it is important to start having these conversations in the midterm future at least. Some recommendations here are to explore grant and other funding opportunities. Something like a future growth area master plan would be something that a consultant would need to help the city with just due to the size of the project. And then the associated costs with that would be dependent upon the overall scope of work. Some of the things that may be worth considering in such a scope of work is the land use and development intensity in relation to things like utility servicing and extension, in relation to transportation needs, in relation to economic and fiscal impacts and opportunities, as well as some of the governmental coordination. There is, I think, some opportunity for some joint coordination with county, school district, park district. They all have various growth needs as well. And so it might be worth having some conversations with those entities as well on potentially partnering on some type of venture. And then obviously public participation is a big thing, especially when it comes to visioning what the future growth areas of the city ultimately look like and what the city wants to see as it grows and over time. Next project within the midterm category is the Unified Development Code. This is a recognition that we have some codes in place that are aging. Best practice is that your zoning codes are adopted in order to implement your comprehensive plan. Our current zoning codes, I think, were last comprehensively touched, I think, in the mid-'80s, is my understanding. And so we have a modern or an updated comprehensive plan and a few tweaks to that, to the existing zoning code, such as the downtown mixed-use zoning district or the entertainment mixed-use zoning district, which reflect some of those more recent city goals. But it is worth looking at where else can the city make changes to the existing codes that more accurately reflect the city's vision as identified through the public participation of the West Fargo 2.0 comprehensive plan. Also, part of these discussions involved other things like infrastructure and construction design standards. There are a whole host of different regulations and codes that a developer needs to be aware of that are located outside of the zoning code, and so there might be some opportunities for some increased coordination between different articles, different sections of code that could be looked at as a comprehensive update. For example, when subdivision ordinances are updated, the associated infrastructure codes may be not updated, and you might get some inconsistencies over time as amendments are made over the years. Something like this is a big lift. It would likely be a multi-year process, and it would likely include, depending upon the scale or the scope of the update, you could do some small tweaks to the existing code, or it could be a complete rewrite or complete overhaul, if you will. So figuring out what might be needed is kind of the first step, and that will determine ultimately the timeline and any consultant needs there. So those were the main items I wanted to cover. I'll kind of gloss through the rest here, but certainly able to circle back and cover any items of interest. Included in the midterm projects is a sign code update. This is something that the city has worked with the same consultant on in years past to start to look at some needed updates to the sign code, mainly due to some changes in Supreme Court cases a few years back that affects sign codes nationwide, and so making sure that we're compliant with First Amendment requirements. Another project here is increased coordination for space management. This is just recognizing that there's a lot of various discussions on facilities, not just within the city, but with partner jurisdictions and entities that there might be some opportunities there for some joint discussions and with those various jurisdictions. Specific corridor, infrastructure, utility servicing plans. This is very closely tied to the recommendations relating to the capital improvement program, but it's more, I guess, servicing plan oriented, if you will. So the recent core areas infrastructure master plan is a good example of something like that, where it might be worth a deeper dive into any specific topic areas. And lastly, the long-term projects listed within the action plan, things that have been identified, but kind of fell to the lower priority list here is a public arts plan. Eventually, the city would need to look at an update to the comprehensive plan. Kind of the best practice is every 10 years or so is a pretty good cadence for keeping your comprehensive plan up to date. Third one there is a mobility master plan. That's tied to a lot of the studies that MetroCog does, for example, but potentially looking at something more focused on the city of West Fargo specifically, and not solely focusing on federally funded roads and things like that, but some of those local infrastructure as well. And then lastly, neighborhoods and housing master plan, recognizing there's a lot of focus on future growth areas, but also we don't want to lose sight of existing neighborhoods within the core areas of town, for example. So that's kind of the broad overview. Again, I'm happy to circle back to anything that you'd like. I do want to note here that for additional information for anybody watching this that wants to kind of view a fuller presentation, the recordings of the February 8th joint working session and the March 7th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting are available on the city's website, or anybody from the public can feel free to contact the planning department for additional information and resources as well. So again, this was an informational item here. The main intent is to have some citywide, organization-wide conversations to help inform the planning department's work plan now and into the future, and then to kind of make the conversation a little bit more transparent, especially when it comes to some of those larger items that may require some funding in the future. So with that, happy to answer any questions or hear any feedback you may have.
Commissioners, any questions of Mr. Nelson?
I do, Mayor.
Please, Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. So Aaron, we're talking about the short term here now, okay? When are we starting the downtown master plan as far as just the downtown area?
So the hope is to have something on the agenda April 3rd for that. Hoping to get a contract in front of the commission for consideration April 3rd, but it may be the second meeting in April.
Okay, and I'm looking at your, your program here, and I thought we had, at the last meeting that we had, I thought we decided that we were just going to use the $100,000 grant money. And when I'm looking at yours here, you have a lot more money than that, adding up all that, the hotel hospitality analysis, the office market analysis, and so forth. Did we not discuss just going to the 100,000 and stopping and prioritizing?
From what I recall, that was a part of the discussion. I don't believe there was any final determination on that. We did have conversation on the details of the funding being part of the contract presentation. When the downtown master plan specifically came to the city commission previously, it was a request for staff to issue an RFP, and we provided a general window, I guess, of what we anticipate the funding to be. Specific funding requests, specific project costs came in as part of the proposal submittal process. And so depending upon who submitted a proposal, the costs were all different. We did assemble a consultant selection committee. We had representation of 2 commissioners, 2 planning and zoning commissioners, economic development advisory committee, and staff on that. And so again, my hope is to bring all that, package that up for you all and bring that to you in 2 weeks' time.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, Mark, I think just to clarify a little bit on this plan that's in the agenda packet, I believe was pulled together pretty close to or prior to any of the RFPs that were received for the downtown master plan. So I think this is just kind of an idea. It says that the upper range could include a portion of, et cetera, for the market analysis and things like that. It's not necessarily this is what we're doing.
Okay, good. Because I know, that hotel hospitality market analysis. I mean, I know we can get that from the CVB. They do that every day, that kind of stuff. So I'm just saying we could save money here, and I think we need to look at that when it does come out, trying to save some money.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Mr. Nelson? All right, very comprehensive plan, very thorough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on in the regular agenda to item number 4. It's project number 9036, the I-94 and 26th Street West interchange. Mr. Dan Hansen, city engineer for the city of West Fargo. Mr. Hansen is looking for us to authorize the staff and legal department to enter into negotiations for a land acquisition for a future I-94 interchange. It's on pages 160 to 172 in your packet. Mr. Hansen, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. In front of you is an opportunity for staff to take a look, given the recent petition for improvements and platting of the Sand Hill 6 edition, for us to look into the future and potentially secure some land for a future interchange. To summarize it, basically, there has been a study done by MetroCog that identified 26th Street West as the future north-south corridor upon future expansion of West Fargo. I know I've had a couple discussions with a couple of you. We've entered into looking at that plat that they've presented to us, and the developer could either go either way. They could either plat it with all of the land that they own and develop that into whatever they develop it into. We, as a staff, took a look, knowing that the 26th Street West corridor is, by the studies, the intended north-south route, that this would be an opportunity for us to work with the developer to potentially purchase some of that land in the southeast corner of what they're developing, for us to have right-of-way for that future corridor. If you take a look right now where the new diversion is going in, there's going to be a couple sections of land that's going to be southwest of the interstate, and there has been talk of 13th Avenue having an overpass, but the DOT will not allow that to be a full-blown interchange. That would just be an overpass that would allow to connect those people. So again, we're not here to talk about that, but just to give you a little bit of background. The other portion of that is this interchange right now where Main Avenue comes into the interstate and the north-south corridor. If we don't have this north-south corridor in the future, residents that live in that area or anybody that wants to go from the new expansion areas north and south of the interstate, they're going to have to travel a mile west to that existing interchange to be able to access those parts. So we have asked the developer if they would be interested in allowing the city to purchase some of that land eventually. Through this platting process, instead of having them plat that and use that as a commercial corner for it. There is in
in every plat, there is a land dedication that's required. There's also some right-of-way that we own right now that would be vacated, and we wouldn't want to vacate some existing right-of-way and then pay to purchase land back. So there would be some discussions on getting basically credit for some of that right-of-way that we would be vacating in that area. And what we would like to do as a staff is, and the reason I'm really here is to judge the commission's interest in allowing staff to start some negotiations for us to secure some right-of-way for that potential land purchase. One of the things to consider is eventually when we go to the DOT and we request that they put an interchange in there that shows some connectivity in there, one of the first questions that's always asked is, do we have the right-of-way? If we don't secure it right now and say it gets developed, you don't know what they would build on it, but purchasing the raw land right now as opposed to buying out a business at the point that we would eventually want to put that interchange in, we would be saving the taxpayers some money in securing that land now. The city would own it. There is in the packet an example from Metrocog's study that shows that, and it just shows an example of what that interchange could potentially look like. I would think that, and I've got it up on the screen right now, so you can see the Sandhills 6th edition preliminary plat that's been submitted is in this location here. With 26 coming in, we would look to develop some form of a configuration that would allow, the traffic to be able to access in a full interchange at that location. The fear is if we don't have that land and we request the DOT to install an interchange modification at a later date, then we wouldn't be able to answer them when they ask if we have the right-of-way. We would have to say no, it would have to be part of a purchase, and then we would have to start that process. So in the interest of saving the taxpayers some dollars and getting the land for the city to be able to use for this interchange, what we're requesting tonight is not the purchase or anything, but just allowing staff to negotiate with the developer, taking into account any kind of land dedication that they have to go with the platting, taking into account that we're vacating some right-of-way, and eventually coming back with a plan to bring back to the commission for some form of approval. And with that, I would take any questions.
So you're looking for, the parcel in question is about 132,000 square feet, is that correct?
We haven't actually, there's an example in the packet that
Right,
has.
page 161.
Yep, and what that shows right now is something that was provided by the developer and the consultant as something that would look as, the pink would be the purchase, the green would be existing dedication that they would have to provide. We haven't studied this, agreed to it, or approved anything, but this shows the location.
All right. So where are the negotiations with regard to the developer and some of the remaining property owners? Do you have any idea, Mr. Hanson?
There was an analysis done by Mr. Shockley for the TIF district. That number was and Mr. Shockley, please cut me off if I misquote you, but basically what that TIF district could provide the developer as far as the ability to use those monies for their development and the purchasing. The last I heard, that number was given to the developer, and they were reaching out to those different parcels to give them what they consider a reasonable offer for those properties. I have not heard anything past that.
Okay, very good, thank you. Commissioners, any additional questions? Commissioner George?
Just a comment. I just think it's absolutely essential that we have this project to improve the connectivity to those areas of town. I live up there, and the connectivity is not great. And if we're going to expand those areas, this is absolutely essential. In my opinion, it absolutely has to be done. So I'm fully supportive of this.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And if I could add, one of the things that we would come back would be conditional, this purchase would be conditional probably upon them actually doing the plat. So that say they back out of the plat and they're not doing anything, then we're not necessarily, the reason we're here tonight is because they are planning on platting it, so.
Very good. Okay. Again, Mr. Hanson is asking us to authorize staff in our legal department to enter into negotiations only for the land acquisition for a future I-94 interchange.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve project number 9036, the I-94 and 26th Street West acquisition for future interchange plans. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you.
Item number 5 is Project 2272, concrete pavement repairs, presented this evening by Mr. Dan Hanson, City Engineer for the City of West Fargo. And the actionable item is to accept the bids and award the contract. It is on pages 173 to 181 in the packet. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. At a recent commission meeting, we were authorized to go out and bid. This is our annual concrete repair project where engineering works with Public Works to identify deficiencies in our existing roadway system and cracks, spalls, failures in the pavement. And this is an annual maintenance project that we do that we typically would bid out. This is concrete repairs. This isn't something and the scale of what we need to do is not something that we would expect our public works staff to be able to do. It's something that we have bid out every year. We did go out and solicit bids, and Tyzac Concrete, who was the contractor that did our last one, they did a very good job, and they were the low bidder in the amount of $783,351.40. And so we would look for the commission to accept the bids and award the contract to Tyzac in that amount.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Moved and seconded to approve project number 2272 to accept the bids and award the contract for $783,351.40. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Item number 6 is the second reading of ordinance 1220. 13-1522 regarding trucks and truck routes. Mr. Dustin Scott, Assistant City Administrator, the action is to approve a second reading of ordinance 1220. It's on pages 182 to 184 in your packet. Good evening, Mr. Scott. Welcome.
Thank you, Commission President Dardis. Good evening, members of the Commission. If you recall, at our last meeting, we had the first reading where we talked about an ordinance revision that regulates our truck routes. Our traffic enforcement officer, Wesley Booth, proposed a couple of slight modifications just to improve the understanding of how that ordinance is enforced. And during the discussion, the commission also directed staff to come back with some of the possible sign changes and additional signs that we can put forward out on the streets to, again, just help provide some clarity on where our truck routes are and so on and so forth. So in your packet here, you can see some recommendations from Officer Booth. These still need to be vetted with the Public Works Street Department once the snow melts and we have better visual on, say, the boulevard conditions and so on and so forth. But this just gives you an idea that what we are trying to do is provide advanced warning and also just additional truck route signs so that our drivers are fully aware of where they are, in addition to those ordinance revisions that they understand how we are enforcing those things. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Are there any questions for Mr. Scott? I would like to thank Commissioner George and the Officer Booth and the Chief of Police for digging into this and responding to a concern that was raised within our community. And I think that the outcome is palatable for everyone. So nice work. Anything else? Any questions for Mr. Scott?
I'll move we approve the second reading of that ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Has been, Commissioner Olson, is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the second reading of ordinance 1220, 13-1522 regarding trucks and truck routes in the city of West Fargo. This is approving the second reading. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 7 on the regular agenda is the review and approval of the Department Head Hiring Committee policy. It's on page 185 of your packet. It has been distributed. And I'm going to call on Commissioner Simmons. You initially brought this forward, so Commissioner?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, what you see in front of you is basically, it is what it says, so we just kind of put it more in a formality, I guess, than anything. But like we talked about the last meeting, it just basically means 2 commissioners anytime we hire a department head, and they cannot be from the same portfolio. So it kind of gives a little more, I guess, mixes us up a little more. That was kind of what the plan, I guess. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. The point being, if we're hiring somebody for Public Works, that only one of the portfolio carriers, because we have a primary portfolio and a secondary. So if Commissioner Olson is on that, because that's his primary, then who's the secondary? Secondary on the, give me.
Simmons.
Anderson, isn't it?
I thought so too.
My secondary is sanitation.
Oh,
Oh, I've got street, I don't have all of
Yeah,
Okay,
split up.
so
reports. So
anyway,
it's broken up.
the two that carry the portfolio will not be on the hiring committee. They'll have it from fire, police, which is Commissioner Simmons, sanitation, Commissioner George. I'm on administrative. And of course, Commissioner Anderson is planning, zoning, and engineering on his primary. So,
I just want to, can I make a statement?
please,
Based on how it's written, that the minute somebody applies for this and we start the interview process, it will be open to the public. Meaning, if, say there's an opening and Commissioner Anderson and myself and Commissioner Dardis are all applying for that, we can all be in the room when one of us is being interviewed. Because it's open to the public. And is that what we?
that would be correct, I think, Commissioner Olson. Yeah, as long
That
as
is
it's a
correct.
public meeting, we can all be there. So.
Do you want that to be that way? If you were applying, would you want your competitors to be in there?
You know, that's the way it is everywhere else. Every city, the school district just went through it with their superintendent. That's the process. That's the way it is. Transparency. I don't know how we think that we can be different than the city of Fargo, or like I said, the school district just went through that. I don't know how we can possibly think we can be different than that. I think our standards have to be the same, whether we like it or not. It is what it is in today's society, I guess. And I can't sit here and try to say, like you're kind of saying, Commissioner Olson, well, it needs to be private when everybody else, every other government entity is open. How can we do that? I don't understand how we could do that.
Could I call on Mr. Shockley? You have any comments on this regarding the questions being raised?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Commission President. So 2 things. So with respect to applicants for the position, under the last legislative session, the open records law was changed so that it's only the final 3 finalists. So if you had 100 people apply for the job, it would only be the last 3 that would be, their names would be open to the public. And so what you would typically do in an open meeting, if you're reviewing, say, 10 applications and you hadn't narrowed it down to the 3 final, you would just refer to it as candidate A, candidate B, candidate C. Members of the public could actually not see those names until they were made final. The second question regarding what do you do if you have candidates in the room and you don't want them to all sit in, most cities that I've worked with will ask the candidates if they would mind leaving the room during the interview for the other candidates. You can't force them to, but most of the candidates I've ever seen have, complied and left, recognizing that they wouldn't want to be in the same position of having to sit through an interview with their competitor sitting there. But you can't force them to leave. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Again, the discussion item is the approval of the department head hiring committee policy. So this is an actionable item this evening. What's your pleasure?
I'd make the motion to approve.
Commissioner Sivan moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the department head hiring committee policy. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 8 is to accept the city administrator's resignation, declare the office of city administrator vacant, and direct the city attorney to prepare a memo for the next steps. The first part of this evening is I will be reading the resignation letter of Tina Fisk as it was presented. All the commissioners have a copy in front of them. Commissioner Simmons, I believe you had yours sent to you. All right?
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
This is the letter, verbatim. Commission President Dardis, leaders are people that do what is right, not what is easy. Leaders are people who make decisions that are sometimes in the best interest of others and not themselves. Leaders are people that understand respect is not a right due to them by title, but earned by the actions they take and the integrity they show. Leaders surround themselves with people who are smarter than them, stronger than them, and encourage them and support them to be the very best that they can be. I have been blessed to work alongside leaders every single day at the city. Every single employee at the city of West Fargo is a leader. They care, they bring their heart, compassion, and integrity to the city every single day. A true leader wants a team that feels supported, respected, and trusts that their best interests are at heart. That is what we have with West Fargo staff. I would like to thank every one of them for being the best of the best, for always going above and beyond, for teaching me so much. Members of the commission informed me that the city needs to go in a different direction, and my type of leadership is not what they are looking for. My hope is that you get together as a commission and support this staff, trust this staff, and allow them to continue to be the amazing people they are. With that said, I resign as city administrator for the city of West Fargo, effective immediately. This will allow those commissioners that want change to work on a new direction. Sincerely, Tina Fisk. That's the conclusion of the letter. Before we continue, I'd like to share some remarks about Tina Fisk's time with the city of West Fargo and the support of our staff to move forward. I'd like to thank Tina for her 11 years of service to the city of West Fargo. Her financial and institutional expertise was a valuable asset for this community and for me as mayor. When I became commission president, she quickly brought me up to speed on city workings, and she continued to advise me, especially with the historical background of the city, and to help me make important financial decisions. Further, her leadership cultivated a group of employees that are the best of the best. It is my sincere goal and duty to support you as we work through this transition, and you continue to bring your heart, your compassion, and integrity to the city every single day. I want the staff to know that I personally am here, and I am committed to ensuring that the city of West Fargo continues to be supportive, in its work environment, dedicated to serving the community of West Fargo and its taxpayers. I will now turn this over to any other comments that any of the commissioners would like to make.
I'd like to make a comment.
Commissioner Olson.
This is to the employees of the city of West Fargo. Keep your heads held high. Keep doing the excellent jobs that you all do every day, with little or no fanfare or acknowledgement by some. In the nearly 5 years of serving on the city commission, I found out some key things about Tina. She truly cared about the city of West Fargo, and more importantly, she cared about every employee in this city. Being the city administrator wasn't just a job to her. She considered each and every employee a member of her family, so the city was her family. She put in countless hours ensuring the city kept functioning. Tina and I would meet each Tuesday morning and have hot chocolate, because neither one of us drinks coffee. And in addition to discussing the city's matters, Tina would always ask me about my family and what was going on with me outside of City Hall. This was Tina, genuine and caring. Tina had to do things that most of us may have a hard time doing. Telling people no was one of them. She didn't do that because she could as a city administrator. She would say no with the best interest of the city of West Fargo always in her mind. She knew the ramifications of saying yes in some situations, because when doing so, it may not have been in the best interest of West Fargo. She would never do anything that would jeopardize West Fargo legally or financially. Saying no is not a sign of disrespect. It's a sign of leadership. Tina was a true leader. At one of my first meetings, the West Fargo 2.0 comp plan was reviewed. I couldn't believe how energetic and vested all the employees were in this city. And I thought to myself, this would be a great place to work. I've been told that Tina was a driving force to assemble such a team, and many have come and continue to stay because of Tina. In Tina's resignation letter, she laid out a direction of trusting, listening, and working with staff. I'd like the staff to know that that is the direction I'm planning to take. So as we move forward in this transition, a different direction as it's been said, you employees may see me roaming the halls of City Hall, the Pioneer Center, library, police and fire, and public works. I'm not doing this because I've got this little badge that allows me into most places, but more importantly, I'm seeing how Tina's extended family is doing what I consider my family too. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? With that, I'm going to call on Mr. John Shockley, the city attorney for the city of West Fargo, to guide us through the next steps. Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Mr. Commission President, members of the West Fargo Commission. So you'll see on the agenda, I've laid out the steps that you can undertake with one motion, and I'll just briefly describe why you're undertaking each of those. So on the first, you're accepting the city administrator's resignation. To be formally effective, the city administrator's resignation has to be accepted by the city commission as a whole. And so you're just taking that act on to accept the resignation. The second is to declare the office of city administrator vacant. This actually has some important legal impacts for the city. The city administrator is also the city auditor. The city auditor is responsible to sign very mundane things like contracts, ordinances, all bank accounts, those things, to keep the city operating from day to day. Under the Century Code, the deputy city auditor, who's sitting next to me, once that office is vacant of city administrator, has those powers until you fill that position. And so for at least the next 2 weeks, until we figure out what the next steps are, then Dustin can undertake those basic actions. Dustin and I have spoken. Our whole goal is to make sure that the commission is well aware of what's going on, be transparent about those issues. I don't foresee any real substantive issues coming up over the next 2 weeks. So it'll really truly be, signing ordinances, signing plats, those sorts of issues. And then the final action is to direct me to put together a memo about what the next steps will be. I've been through this process several times before with different clients. In the memo, I'll lay out different options that you have as a commission. I consider the city administrator / city manager probably one of the most important decisions the city commission makes, because that's really who you communicate with, that's who you manage, and that person then manages the staff. And so there's a number of steps that you can take that would either lead to hiring a city administrator quickly, or maybe you hire an interim city administrator and then you go on. I'll lay those out in the memo. The one thing I want to emphasize is that I'm here to help guide you through the process. It's not my decision. And so it will entirely be up to you how you want to proceed with the process in accordance with the law. One of my recommendations in a position like this always is make sure that you're opening the process up to as many people who are interested in applying for the position as possible. Have a two-stage process for interviewing, where you first go through the applications. You'll be surprised you'll get some people that will apply for the position that, while they might have an interesting job history, that's not relevant to the position that you're applying. Make sure that you have interviews and make sure that you're comfortable with the interview process. And that can include things like, a draft press conference, how they're writing submissions, things like that to start thinking about. But I'll go over that in the memo and provide you some options, and we can walk through them the next meeting. What I thought was really important is just get us through the next 2 weeks so that we can do the basic governance issues. I'll be working with the city administrator and also the commission president so that everything's transparent over the next 2 weeks. But once again, after briefly chatting, there's not a lot of substantive issues going on right now. So I'm certainly open to answering any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Questions for Mr. Shockley? With that being said, I'm going to break this into 2 parts. The first is to accept the city administrator's resignation, Tina's resignation. So can we deal with that item first, please? I need a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to accept the city administrator's resignation.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons, and Commissioner George seconded. It's been moved and seconded to accept the resignation of Tina Fisk, city administrator, to the city of West Fargo. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now we are looking for a motion to declare the office of the city administrator vacant and direct the city attorney to prepare a memo on the next steps in conjunction and discussions with the commission president and the acting assistant city administrator.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to declare the office of the city administrator vacant and to direct the city attorney to prepare the memo for the next steps in the process in working with the commission president and the assistant deputy city administrator. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next order of business, Mr. Scott. City Administrator's report. Do you have anything to report for us?
Good evening again, Commissioners. Not much to report aside from, obviously this past week has been certainly a bit of a whirlwind, challenging. We're going to miss Tina, but I can say that I'm very proud of our department heads and our staff for stepping up. I've had overwhelming support from everybody to try to see where we can fill the gaps and how we can put our best foot forward in the near future here. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Scott? Is there any correspondence that you have, Dustin, other than what's been distributed?
No, I don't.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any non-agenda items you'd like to bring forward at this time?
I do.
Commissioner Olson, please.
I would like the mayor to consider ending the ability for Zoom commission meetings. The only reason we did that was for public health reasons, and we are no longer in a pandemic. So I am asking that we stop that because we are all residents of West Fargo, and traveling from our homes to city commission should not be a burden for us. So I ask you to discontinue that as of this meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. I need to give that some thought and figure out, I don't believe the city of West Fargo has a policy with regarding that. I know that, during the pandemic, out of necessity is when we did create that. So I'm going to confer. I will consider it, but I will confer with legal counsel on that as to the possibility. Commissioner George.
I'd say we vote on that right now. I'm gonna say that I adamantly disagree with that statement. I travel for work. He travels. He travels, and I take that personally, that comment, because I can't attend a lot of meetings because of my full-time job, which pays my bills. And I'm sorry, but I feel insulted by that comment. So I want to take a vote to deny that request.
It's not.
I will.
It's not
I
intended.
faulted as well,
that.
Mayor. I mean,
Hey,
we all know he's
Commissioner
picking on me
Simmons?
right now just because
Commissioner
of vendetta.
Simmons, you do not have the
Commissioner Olson.
floor. Commissioner Olson.
I just want you to consider it, that's all.
Okay. Commissioner
Let's take a vote.
Simmons, you now have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Let's take a vote. I agree with Commissioner George. It's, this is technology. This is what we do nowadays. So to say that to me is just being it's an insult and it's just being vindictive. So I would like to take the vote right now and just end this silly question.
That being said, everybody is out of order because I don't have a motion. I'd have to have a motion before I can act on it. So
I'll make a motion
Commissioner
to
Olson
deny
asked for me to
Commissioner
consider
Olson's
it.
request.
So if somebody else wants to do this differently, I need a motion and a second. It's just that simple.
Okay, I made a motion, Mayor.
Commissioner Simmons moves.
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. And been moved and seconded that we continue to allow Zoom meetings for city commission meetings going forward. Is there any further discussion? Is there any further discussion? All those in favor that we continue to have Zoom meetings and city commissioners can participate by that means, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Are there any non-agenda items that any department head would like to bring forward this evening? No? With that, Chief, I want to congratulate you again on your leadership on bringing the Devil's Lake Law Enforcement Academy to our communities. I think that was a bold move on your part, and we look to continue to have that relationship with the school up there and with what you and your command staff is doing. I think the idea that we had 4 gentlemen this evening, 3 homegrown, which is really significant in my opinion. That is, it really states volumes about our wonderful community and the stature of the police department and how it's represented and supported by this community. So, Chief, please pass on to you and all your command staff. That's an extraordinary evening as far as I'm concerned. Thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge Emily Hagemeister. Thank you. This last part of the week, and Melissa Richard, there's been a lot of things from communication that's had to go out, and I want to thank you both for stepping up in the manner that you have. Greatly appreciated. Thank you. Anything else, Commissioners? Commissioner Simmons.
Move to adjourn, please.
Commissioner Olson.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.